Today I'm speaking with the fabulous Kimberley Congram, and I'll introduce Kimberley. Kim worked to reform and transform the inclusion network for people with disability in the Attorney General's Department of the Australian Public Service. She redeveloped the Celebrating Ability network, growing membership from 0.3% to 11%. Whoa! Her enthusiasm and leadership has built an environment of support and inclusivity, built trust amongst the cohort, and enhanced inclusion of people with disability and diversity. And I'll just explain to you the award that Kim has received in the National Awards for Disability Leadership. Kim is the recipient of the Change-Making Award, which I've closed on my thing, so I'll just get it back. That's really good of me, isn't it? Can't believe I've done this one, Kim. That's just an exciting moment in my life. So the Change-Making Award is awarded to somebody for achieving greater equality for disabled people by changing policy, programs, or legislation. I think we could agree that Kim has done that with her outstanding work, not just establishing but really growing quite substantially an internal disability network. These things are not easy, and they're particularly not easy in large institutional settings like the public service. So congratulations, Kim, on your award in the National Awards for Disability Leadership, and thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about how you got to this sort of work. Why are you doing this stuff?
Yeah, so I started in the department in 2013, or end of 2013, I should say. And when I started in the department, there was a disability employment network known as the DEN, and it just didn't have a very good membership. So essentially, I think there was about 14 members at the time, and of them, maybe 4 were active, including myself. And for me, I've kind of come to this as someone who is living with a chronic illness, and was just recognized that people with disability were underrepresented in the department, and that the network itself had an opportunity to really work for more inclusive outcomes for the department and for the staff who were coming into the department. So I actually came into the Attorney General's Department through the Stepping Into program as part of the Australian Network on Disability. And I've also been a member of the Future Shapers through the Disability Leadership Institute, which was fantastic. And I think all of these experiences have kind of led me to a point where I realized that in order for us to progress as people with disability in terms of a professional outcome, we need to have the supports, and we need to have the ability to put forward our voice. And in order to do that, networks are one way within departments in particular that we can do that, and we can really find like-minded people who can amplify the voices that we have. So that was really my kind of goal with forwarding the network and where we've ended up.
So, let's just acknowledge, we've already touched on it, but it's not easy to change the way that some of these monolithic corporate-like structures and bureaucracies work. They're pretty fixed in how they operate. There's a bunch of people who think, it's done this way and it should be done this way. It's always been done this way. So, here you are receiving the Change-Making Award. So you change that. What kind of barriers or resistance did you meet along the way?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, when we first started back in 2013, 2014, the network itself had a really poor reputation. And the word disability in the department had a really bad connotation because of that particular network. So the network itself wasn't really supporting anyone with disability. There were issues around the interaction with human resources. And there was just kind of this vibe that when we talked about the den, it really was dark and gloomy and just not a great place to be. So one of the first things that we did was we ran a competition that we ended up renaming it to the CAN, so the Celebrating Ability Network. And that was member-led. So we went out to the whole department, they voted on it. But I think the most important thing for that was that it was a fresh start. And I think the important thing to note when you start anywhere with kind of anything that you're undertaking is knowing where you're starting from. And so the first thing for us to do was really say, okay, well, we know that this isn't great. Let's start fresh and let's look at where the opportunities are. So the CAN really came out of that. And so we said, we need more members and we need a bigger voice and we need to be influencing the policies that are out there. And we need to be able to be in the ear of the people who can make the changes. So Chris Moratis came into the department at the same time for the Attorney General's department. And he is obviously an amazing individual who is very passionate about disability inclusion. And he did a lot to really support the Celebrating Ability Network at that point in time. But I think for us, having that senior buy-in was great, but we actually needed to do something about it. And I think that that's the real core to this, is we didn't just kind of do awareness raising in terms of, celebrating, International Day of People with Disability, etc. We actually went out there and put our foot forward and said, well, here are the policies that we have an issue with, or here are the things that we need to see happening in the department in order to influence true change and actually make inclusion happen. And I think that being able to have a value proposition that it like this is really important for your success, because then members feel more trust in it and you're able to actually point to something and say, well, this is why we're making change and this is why it's really important.
Yeah, so you've mentioned Chris Moratis, who, of course, is the former head of the Attorney General's Department. He's now moved on. And he was one of the, it might still be, one of the disability champions across the Australian Public Service. How important do you think it is to have that top level buy-in to this sort of change?
Yeah, I think it eases the way a little bit. I would say you can still do change without it, but it's a lot harder and you're going to face a lot more barriers. And so having champions who are able to support you and create space for your voices to be heard is really essential. You don't want them to be the voice for you. Instead, you want them to create the space for your voice to be heard. And I think it's really difficult if you're not able to kind of get a voice in the room or a seat at the table. And that's why having those champions is so important to enable you to do that.
Yeah. So where to next, Kim?
Well, so for me, there's a few things. So the Celebrating Ability Network, the biggest thing has been sustainability, and being able to take a step back and allow new ideas and fresh ideas in. So that's what I've done. I've taken a step back and we've now got new leadership who have come in. I'm still active with the network, but I think it's really important that when you're building networks, particularly within public service or big organizations, that it's not a network of personality, as in it's not just driven by one person, but instead you have a succession and you have that plan in place to enable it to succeed. And so that's what we did. We really built up a core community, and we've got some amazing new chairs in, we've got some amazing new people who have come in who are doing things like policy and taking forward events and that kind of thing. And so that's fantastic for them. In terms of me personally, I'm actually working with a couple of different networks to kind of help them. So they're at the place that we were when I first started with the Celebrating Ability Network. So working with them to kind of progress their own networks and their own outreach. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Aha, so that leadership moment of actually mentoring others.
Yeah.
Stepping in.
A little.
Let's name it. Let's name it for what it is. Oh, that's fantastic stuff. And we're almost out of time. It goes so fast. I can't believe it. The thing I like to ask everyone before we finish up is who is a leader that you admire and why?
Yeah, so probably one of the leaders that I most admire is Jacinta Ardern. I just think that she is in the public eye so much, and yet she is very humble and really honest and has kept her humility as part of it. And I think that's really important as we kind of, as we move through kind of leadership, is to say, well, what do I know and what don't I know? And I appreciate the fact that she is often someone who says, look, I don't know, but let's find out together. And I really appreciate that about her.
Oh, lovely. That's lovely stuff, isn't it? Kimberley Congram, thank you so much for joining us today, for making the time. And congratulations once again on receiving the Changemaking Award in the National Awards for Disability Leadership.
Thank you so much, Christina.